Hey, this is Annika. I am at White Sands National Park in New Mexico. Um, I'm trying to do this without sunglasses, but it's not going to work. It is way, way, way too bright. And so I found this little, just this little spot among the dunes where there's plants growing. And it's been such an incredible experience being in the desert. I mean, I come from wet climates. I grew up in Germany. That's wet. I live in the Pacific Northwest. That's incredibly wet. And so being in these desert environments, it is mind-boggling to me how much life there is. Like this plant, for example, I forget what it's called, but it is incredibly fast growing, and it kind of throws out roots like at a distance because the sand dunes travel, and so it has to keep moving with the moving dunes. So it just grows super fast and spreads its roots really far so that as the sand covers this one and it dies, a new one will pop up wherever the sand dune has wandered to. There's another plant that solidifies the sand around it and makes its own little tower that it grows on top of. Another one that just digs its roots like crazy, crazy deep down through the dunes into like the deeper layers. And then there's tracks of animals. I've seen a snake. I've seen a rabbit, and I've seen tracks and I've seen a lizard or some sort of lizard creature, and I've seen tracks of all kinds of animals all over the place. So it's just mind-boggling to me how resilient life is, and it has me thinking about how seemingly unresilient we as humans have become. There's a lot of people who criticize this current social justice movement, wokeness, often speak of victim mentality and fragility. And then you'll hear people say like, oh, these people just need to stop being so fragile, or they need to stop being snowflakes. And I don't agree with that demand. I think that people are where they are at. I don't think you can just make yourself be more resilient or decide to be less fragile and feel less victimized just because someone thinks you should. I think that fragility is very real, but it's also not. It's not like a life sentence. It's not. It's an okay place to be, but it doesn't have to become an identity. It doesn't have to be permanent. And I believe that a big part of the fragility that we are seeing in this identitarian movement actually comes from our inability to grieve. So we've mostly called things resilient that aren't really truly resilience. It's more like we've been suppressing a lot of our difficulties. So this like stoicism, that we see in like military first responder types, it's not true resilience. It's an ability to push things down for a long time, but eventually people crack. How many homeless and not sane vets are there on the streets of the U.S.? First responders who eventually succumb to alcoholism or become abusive towards their partners. So it's not that we were resilient and then all of a sudden here comes wokeness and oh no, now we're all fragile, like bad wokeness, make the wokeness go away so we can all be resilient again. I don't think that's what happened. I think we were, as a culture, valuing a stoicism of suppression and bypassing and dissociating from pain. And we valued that and started considered that resilience and strength, but it really was just kind of kicking the ball down the road, and it was always going to come back up again. So I'm not surprised that there's such a movement that makes fragility and victimization as part of its identity and something to even be celebrated. I mean, in some cases, the social justice movement kind of prides itself on on fragility and on victimhood. I don't think that's surprising. I think that's how it's emerging because it's been suppressed for so long and passed down from generation to generation. That doesn't mean that we're condemned to wallow in it and that we have to shape our entire social structures around it. Wow, the sand really does get everywhere. But I think the reason we're not able to move through it is because we don't know how to grieve. So it comes up and then we don't know what to do with it. So then we shape it into identities, we shape it into political movements, we shape it into belief system and into religious practices and into, it becomes like the glue for communities. We kind of sometimes channel it into creative outlets, but we don't know how to actually move the pain and the grief and the fear through our bodies. I do think that underneath all of that, we really are just as resilient as these amazing creatures that can live in this environment. It's just that we are not allowing our bodies to really do what our bodies do. You know, these plants, these animals who live in this really harsh environment, they're not under a whole bunch of shoulds. They go with what their bodies, and their like their natural desires and urges are, and they adapt to their environment. Whereas we socially limit ourselves and we don't allow our bodies to do what they want to do. We don't allow ourselves to cry. If we see somebody crying, we try to stop them. And so, I try not to cry in public often just because I don't want people to come and try to stop me and try to, make it better by stopping my process. But it's really difficult because that's when my body wants that and it wants to move pain through. It needs to cry. Tears are a natural way in which our bodies grieve. Wailing, screaming, beating of the chest. All those things are just natural responses of the body to move stuck emotions and move us out of a state of victimhood and fragility into resilience. Same with fear, shaking, trembling, it's all natural things that our body wants to do. So I believe that resilience is really available to us if we learn individually and as communities to support ourselves being in the body, to not just try to avoid triggering pain, but to support ourselves and each other in moving through it and learning, relearning, remembering how to let our bodies deal with the pain and the fear and all of the stored emotions. Our bodies know how. It's just a matter of coming back to that and allowing ourselves that again. So that's it from the white sands, dunes, and desert for now. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.